Okay, ready to go.
Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The regular meeting, October 26th, 2020. Roll call, please, Veronica.
Ms. Casbon-Latrell.
Here.
Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Mr. Gray.
Here.
Mr. Buziak.
Here.
Ms. I.
Here.
Murphy.
Here.
Ms. Ori.
Here.
Okay. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have we had any late arriving public comments, Denise?
Nope.
Okay. On to there. I haven't had an addition of a non-action item. So now we're on to action items. Item A, final reading and approval of board policies. Someone want to give me a motion on the floor?
I make a motion that we accept the school policy.
That's all right. As presented.
As presented. Thank you. That's what I want.
You bet.
Second.
Okay. Do we have discussion, questions from anyone?
No, I'll just mention that these policies are part of our review process that we're doing this year, and we're updating them as we go. And so we're bringing them into legal compliance with to reflect what the current law is. Two of these policies had not been updated since 2002.
Oh.
So we're due for an update, and a couple of them, so one was as recent as 2017, I think, and just some language and some wording. So there's varying levels of disagreement, but we follow the law, of course, because the law changes quickly, and then we have to go back and change the policies to reflect the law. But we try and keep up with that so that our board policy reflects current law.
Okay. All right. Then roll call. No. Yes,
Yes.
I guess we'll do roll call because.
Always.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Mr. Gray.
Yes.
Mr. Buziak.
Yes.
Ms. I.
Yes.
Mr. Murphy.
Yes.
Ms. Ori.
Yes.
Ms. Casbon-Latrell.
Yes. Okay, the item passes. On to item B, purchase of up to 13 sound field units.
Make a motion to approve the purchase of up to 13 sound field units not to exceed $20,000. Second.
Okay. Is
Okay.
this Dr. John's question or is this your question?
Sure, both and. These are for replacing units that have failed, or because we've added sections this year to classrooms, we need additional units for classrooms. What a sound field is it's a device that projects a teacher's voice throughout the whole classroom. So no matter where the teacher is in the classroom, her voice or his voice carries to all of the kids. It's a really nice speaker that really fills the room with the voice. And we've had these for a lot of years, at least 10 years. We originally wrote a grant to the Milburn Foundation for our initial purchase because they're quite expensive, but they're very effective in the classroom. So we are looking to add and or replace what has been missing and broken over the years. Because they're more important now, because speaking with a mask, as you can tell, speaking through a mask is even tougher to project and articulate sound, so it becomes even more important this year, especially when we have that hybrid learning where we have kids online and kids in the classroom and projecting through a mask to the kids in the classroom and then online, and that's one of our solutions for to help with that.
And then the other thing it does too is it allows teachers to speak in a normal voice, so by the time they leave at the end of the day,
They're not tired.
They have, you don't end up with them straining their vocal cords or anything like that. They can be speaking in a normal tone and every child can hear it.
Correct.
They're fantastic. I actually, when I was principal, piloted those probably 25 years ago. They were fantastic. So I'm sure they're much better now.
Yeah, they were great. We're also going to pilot. Actually, we may not need to spend this. So if we don't need to spend this, it's great. But we want to wait too long if we need them. There's another option that's lower cost that might work. So we're going to try that too.
I can only tell you, as someone who works with voices and has helped people deal with the aftermath of nodes and losing their voices, we want to prevent that as much as possible, especially since our teachers are already going through so much right now. So that's my view. How does everyone else feel about this? Do you understand everything surrounding it? I always
Yep.
feel like they're a million miles away. Okay. Any further questions, anyone? Okay, roll call please, Veronica.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Guziak,
Yes.
Ms. I,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Ori,
Yes.
Ms. Casvon Tourette,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Okay. The motion carries. On to item C. Appoint delegate for the IASB Resolutions Committee.
I'll make a motion that we appoint a delegate to the IASB Resolutions Committee.
Stephen
Should we
has
first-
already agreed to do that this year for us. So, we just, do we need, we don't even need to approve this, do we? Does that have to be a vote though? I don't think so. Stephen Gray is just going to be, yeah. So if you could submit that to IASB. Thank you so much. Okay, on to item D.
Make a motion that we approve the MOU in addition of positions to the stipend schedule.
Need a second.
Second.
Okay, Dr. Lynn, could you please review this for us?
Yep. So we've had discussion. We discussed this in closed session last time, and you were able to review this as a board. These are two stipends: a leadership stipend position and what was the other stipend position?
AIM.
No,
Structured study hall.
Math.
structured study hall. Structured study hall
The
position.
next one is math.
Then the next one is AIM. Oh no, the next one's math and then AIM. Yes.
Lots of understanding.
So these are positions that have already been approved by the board, but we didn't have the language structure in the contract. So this first MOU is trying to match what we've approved in the past. So
Does anybody have questions surrounding?
So how many positions will there be added?
not teaching, no teaching positions. These are stipended positions. So
Okay.
um,
it-
no new people.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
And
Okay.
their positions you already approved, this just gives me the authority to pay them.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
these
It was
are.
the whole thing with the structured study hall, Jim, if you.
That was
recall
last
that?
year. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other one was the leadership positions that we had approved earlier this summer
We did.
for the
Right.
leadership team that meets. They've been meeting a lot. Lots
Right.
of decisions to be made.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions on this? Okay, roll call please, Veronica.
Mr. Guziak,
Yes.
Ms. I,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Ori,
Yes.
Ms. Casvon Tourette,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yeah.
Okay, the item passes. On to item E.
I make a motion to approve the MOU for the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated math class adjusted teaching schedule.
Second.
Okay, Dr. Lynn, could you refresh everyone on this too?
Yes, so because of the way our schedule fell out and having our accelerated math students who are, some are in person and some are remote, the only time that they can meet is actually after they go home from in person in the morning or after they're done with their remote classes in the afternoon. So the class is pushed to the afternoon. We needed someone to teach that class. Those teachers are already having a full schedule in the morning, but what we did is in lieu of them teaching their RTI in the afternoon, it's called SMORE 2. I won't go into that, but it's extra support for kids. And instead of that, they're teaching a math class, an accelerated math class, which is an additional load and burden versus having smaller groups. So we have adjusted their, we're paying them a stipend because of that extra load, essentially. Because there's more grading and more preparation, it's more communication with parents, it's a different group of parents than their regular class, so that's what we're trying to create.
And we discussed this.
We discussed this at the last meeting in the closed session, so this is operationalizing and improving it
With the language.
with the language. Yep.
Does anybody have questions about this?
Yeah, is that going to be entirely remote regardless of what phase we're in?
Correct.
Any further questions? Okay, last call. Okay. Roll call please, Veronica.
Ms. I,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Ori,
Yes.
Ms. Caspan Lateret,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Buziak,
Yes.
Okay. The item passes on to F.
Make a movement to approve the amendment to the arbor management contract.
Second.
Dr. Johns?
Basically, our current contract with Arbor did not include a rate for the summer food service program, which is what we're operating under now during the pandemic. So basically, this adds a rate for us to pay Arbor for both the breakfast and the lunch. And both of those items are less, we're paying less than what we'll get back in reimbursement. I believe the breakfast is $233 is what the actual amount we'll get, and we're paying $2.2975, and the lunch is either $406 or $409. Let's just look and see if I can find it. I think maybe I put it in my report.
You did.
Okay. I just can't remember what it is. It's 4.0875. And this is something the board approves, but then as the authorized representative, Dr. Glenn will sign it.
Does anybody have questions for Dr. Johns on this? It was part of his financial. Okay. Roll call please, Veronica.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Ori, Ms. Ori,
Yes.
Ms. Caspan Lateret,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes?
Mr. Gray,
Yep.
Mr. Buziak,
Yes.
Ms. I,
Yes.
Okay, the item passes. I'd like to move that we approve the consent agenda as presented, which includes the approval of the minutes, the treasurer's report and approval, the bill approval and payment authorization, the activity account, the personnel, and the personnel report.
Second.
Does anybody have anything they'd like for us to remove for independent consideration?
I'd like to point out,
How about the Oh, I'm sorry. Who did I talk over someone?
No, you're fine, Jim.
Oh, I just had a question about one of the hires.
So, was it about Nancy Stream for AIM?
No, Christine Radke. Is she a relation to Kayla Radke?
I don't know.
I don't know if it makes a difference. I'm just asking.
It shouldn't, but no, I don't know. Good question.
Okay.
No, I was
What
just-
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to point out Nancy Stream, we're hiring her for a .2, which is 1 day a week for AIM support to help with teachers. She's going to be available for consultation with teachers to provide extra lessons and support if as needed, and some communication with parents and some other duties, just filling in the gaps. So she's already worked 60 hours this year for us just on an emergency basis, but this would make her officially a .2. It'll cost us 16,000 something.
Does anybody have questions or concerns? I think we discussed it pretty
We did
thoroughly
discuss
last
it, yeah.
time, so. All right. Roll call please, Veronica.
Ms. Ori, Ms. Ori,
Yes.
Ms. Casvallon-Trett,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
I actually lost audio for a minute. I'm gonna refrain from voting. I don't know what this is.
Mr. Bouvier,
Yes.
Ms. I,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy.
Yes.
Stephen, it was just the consent agenda.
I'm sorry. I accidentally muted it on my phone. I couldn't figure out what was going on. If I can go back, I would prove it. I didn't know what it was.
That's all right, no problem. Okay. The item passes on to information discussion item, the FOIA requests. Behold, here they are.
This is
does
the
anybody have
information.
questions about them?
Information part.
It's just, they have to be on there, so. If there are no questions, on to item B, the house lease lottery contract 2021-2022.
Just want to let the board know now is the time where we would be doing the house lease lottery. Every so many years, the way we set it up, every 3 years. 3 years we open it up for a bidding process. It's we draw names out of a hat, actually, if anybody is interested in this. I don't know if the board wants to delay that at this time for a year. You can choose to do that. We don't have to do what the board made the rules.
Right.
So you can choose to delay it for a year and go next year because of the pandemic. So we don't have to go through that process now, or you can choose to go through the process now. I'm okay either way. Just don't.
Technically, you can have a contract for up to 5 years, so you could renew it one more time without any problem.
Right.
Just to remind everyone, this is, where they can stay in the house, but they make checks for the schools on the
Yeah.
weekends. So, I mean, I don't know how everyone else feels, but I'm of the inclination, there's so many moving pieces this year already, that to have a new person making those checks on top of like 1 million new bus routes and everything else, my question is, how will the rest of the staff feel about that?
I don't know.
Okay.
And the current resident would be fine with staying.
I haven't talked to her yet.
Okay. That's my question,
That would be a fair question.
right?
Yeah. If she's not fine with staying, then
Yeah.
that would be a moot point. We'd have to find somebody either way. I'm going to assume that she's fine with staying, but I will talk to her.
Yeah, okay.
I just wanted, before I
Mhm.
go too deep into this, just get the boards, and we don't have to decide tonight. I don't need to know.
Yeah, I think it's good. If the person wants to stay and they can
Just the thought I had of, hey, maybe it's a little too crazy. Krista said one more thing to deal with is if we can take one thing off our plates, that'd be something.
I agree. If she wants to stay, I think we extend the lease for one more year.
I just, make sure we let the staff know that this is a special,
Dispensation.
yeah, this is a
Yes.
special year. And, we won't do it indefinitely. We won't be doing it every single year. It's just, this particular year, we just don't need more things. No more variables, please. Does everybody pretty much agree with that? I don't know.
You can think about it.
Yeah. Marinate on it.
We can talk about it next time.
Yes. So C, remote in-person learning environment update.
Well,
Dr. Lynch.
So as we already know, we moved back to what we call our phase 3 of in-person learning, where we just have kindergarten and first grade, early childhood, and some special ed classrooms on campus at this point. The recommendation from the Lake County Department of Health is to have schools move back into start transitioning back into a virtual learning environment, because it's ramping up and we're past the numbers where we think it should be. There's significant community spread, and so it's time to start going back to virtual. So as part of our process, that's where we're at. The reason why my suggestion was to keep kindergarten, first grade in, is because they're the youngest, most vulnerable kids as far as learning, along with special education. Far more difficult for those kids who have never been in school before to learn about what we need, the skills that they need to be in school for the rest of their career. So it's a tough decision. It weighs obviously heavily on, I'm sure you guys, but on me and whoever else makes that decision, the county, local superintendents. It's not a decision that anybody wants to make, but I felt we couldn't ignore the advice of the county health department. In line with that, most other school districts are following, and they're either delaying. Most other school districts have just been starting to get their kids in small groups, and they either delayed that, pushing in the rest of the kids. Some districts pulled back completely, and some districts, like us, still have some small groups of kids in the building, and are doing what they can until we'll see what happens this week. The governor today said Region 9 is at 8% positivity rate. So 2 more days of that, and there will be forced mitigation from the state within our county. So that's where we're at. I don't know what that looks like. I believe that even if we move back into phase 3, the state and the governor, his phase plan and stage in phase 3 was small groups of students could still come into the building on a very limited, very tight basis. So there's a little different approach and at least on timing and process from what the state recommendation is and from what the county's recommendation is. Our county is a little bit tighter than what the state recommendation is.
Well, they're the ones doing the contact tracing, so.
They're doing contact tracing, and they know that the local context and what's happening, and they're trying to protect Lake County. in Lake County, there's a good reason why Lake County's numbers are still better than every county around us, including Kenosha, Cook, and McHenry, because of some of those mitigating factors. And I think in general, people are wearing masks and have been all summer, and trying to do whatever they can to stop or slow down the spread. So I don't know what to say. we're in a real tough spot, trying to balance the needs of the students, which is great, and the needs of parents, which is also great because of students and families, and the needs of our staff and keeping them safe. All of that is it's all in play, and it's very hard to determine what is the best course of action. I know our kids are having a hard time. Some more than others, clearly, but there are a lot of kids who are having a very hard time at home and not being at school. And I know there's teachers who feel very uncomfortable and staff, I shouldn't just pick on teachers, but who feel very uncomfortable and have been coming in anyway and doing a great job. And but when the numbers start to escalate, and when the recommendation is by the county to go to virtual learning, it makes the anxiety level amongst staff members increases significantly as well. So
well, I think you said you said it well to me earlier, which was, we said we'd do this.
Yep.
If the numbers got to here, and we have to stick with what we said,
Yeah.
because it's, we can't keep moving the goalposts.
You can't keep moving the
for the
goalposts.
staff when we've communicated clearly.
Right.
Something.
Right.
So, if the state has mitigation, if that's still less, it's 25 or less in a room, or is it fewer?
25% or 25 people?
25 people per room, or like
That-
gatherings of 25. Or
Yeah, I'm not sure. And that
Okay.
doesn't necessarily apply to schools. That's more for bars, restaurants, and social gatherings. Schools, because we have a 6-foot rule, so we're not going to get 25 kids anyway. The max we have in any one place is 18 or 19 kids in a room.
Right, that's what I meant though, is that even if we went back per the state.
Yeah, we're still under the state guidelines.
Yeah.
Under their next mitigation phase. If we go back to phase 3, then it would be probably just severe and profound special education students that would be allowed in no classrooms. But I don't know when phase 3 would kick in. That's a couple of steps.
Okay.
What's a little complicated and frustrating for me is the timing of the phases for mitigation, because I truly believe that schools are the safest, and I don't just believe this, I can see the statistics. Schools are very safe as far as spreading the virus, and I think what we are doing here to mitigate any spread at school is very safe. It's not 100%, but the virus is going to have a hard time spreading significantly in our school because we are pretty locked down. But bars and restaurants are still open to this day, which is very frustrating to me, and I don't think it's intentional by anybody's. It's just the way the plans are laid out. Nobody's ever done this plan, so when you pick specific numbers and you go with it and you march it down in a certain way, you say schools are going by this number and the community is going by this number. Things feel a little bit backwards at the moment. I think everything will even out in the end, and sounds like we're going to be going down to a mitigation anyway with bars and restaurants, but that, quite honestly, has been significantly frustrating to me. But I understand it. I get it. I'm not blaming anybody. It's not. I don't think it's intentional. It's just the way it worked out in the timing. So.
Have they been able to, I haven't read closely, have they been able to, does the contact tracing indicate that any of the rise is due to some schools being back in session? Or have the spreading events all been other places?
Yes, the spreading, no spread has occurred. There's no evidence. It could have, but there's no evidence that any spread occurred in any school district in Lake County at this point that we know of. The spreads where it's been contact traced back to certain events have been parties outside of school of kids, funerals, weddings, other social gatherings outside of school where generally kids are hanging around and having fun.
Activities.
Or adults, with weddings and funerals and other activities outside of school.
Does anybody have any question about this mitigation effort or anything?
So the question I have is the comfort level of the board with the county saying that we recommend closing completely, or we're in the process of transitioning to closing, honestly. At this point, unless the numbers do some miraculous change, and I don't see that happening. With the board, with the recommendation of still to remain virtual, is the board comfortable? How comfortable is the board with even having 1 or 2 grade levels in the building?
Well, when we discussed it, it sounded like it was staff generated. The teaching staff wanted to stay
Yes.
in person, and we're begging you to stay in person.
Yes.
And the in-person kids still want to come, but we've also offered them the option of being remote. So if their parents are no longer comfortable with them being in school, they can be via Zoom. And our teachers would rather have a few kids on Zoom and be in person with the rest than. So I'm.
At least some of our teachers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, in general, so I think that's where it, that's where it is with me. We have not had, though we've had COVID in the building, we haven't had any instances where it's spread from one child to another in the building. So, I don't know. What does everybody else think?
Yeah, I think it should be applauded for your willingness to move forward and to blaze a trail for returning children back to normalcy. But I also think if there's just this push to, respond to the current rates, then we should, that's a prudent approach. And I also think the idea of selecting those children that you have to remain in person reduces the burden on the parents that would feel the burden the most. So, of course, all parents have to adjust, and it's difficult for all of them, because now you're juggling, in many cases, work and school. But I think, you've demonstrated good faith in trying to move forward, and this is a setback at this point. So for me, I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah, I would have to say I'm not comfortable going against any county recommendations as far as this is concerned.
else have a comment or how's everybody else feeling about it? We kind of really need to know.
I'm hesitant to reopen. I'm happy to stay closed. I don't think it's going to hurt our kids too much. I think Steve made a great point that there are some families who need the option, so allowing some sort of option for families that don't have another choice is useful. And if the staff want to come in, I mean, that's, I think, the most important part. There's a lot of schools that staff do not want to come in, and I would want to force it. We can keep it just the people who want to come in with a low population. I think we'll be all right.
Do we have any idea on numbers? Those that would absolutely need to have their kids at the school, and those that can, even if it's inconvenient, have the kids at home remote learning. I think we had numbers at one time.
We had numbers on the preferences, but I don't think they were ever divided by those who said, I absolutely must. It was a poll on preference.
Okay, I'm having a little trouble hearing. I think that was Sean, maybe.
Yeah, it's one mask.
This is just for K1 though, Jim. We're only keeping K1 in probably a little bit longer because they want to have as much time as possible.
Yeah.
Everyone else is back to remote.
Okay, so is it K1 and special ed?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So-
If you're looking for opinions, I would say that whatever we could do to have special ed still in-house, that would, I can see that as being preferable. Kindergarten, I don't know. I don't see. I can see where, if necessary, kindergartners could remain at home, but that's me. That's just opinion.
Yeah, I'm okay too I'm comfortable with having the CEDAL students there and the special needs students there that need to be in the building and the K1. I do think it might be important to let those parents know that they do have the option of changing to Zoom if their comfort level has changed. I don't know that all those parents would be aware of that.
Yeah, we haven't gone to that because we're just talking 5 days at this point. I don't know if the numbers get worse, we won't have anybody in the building next week.
Well, it's already higher than the last time I heard. So
Yeah,
which was only a day or so ago.
I haven't seen the numbers today, so they didn't post it. What was it?
8.1.
Oh, for the positivity rate?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for Lake and McHenry. But we see, here's a little, I don't know if it's right or wrong. I'm just trying to explain how difficult this is. The school metrics for the county are based not on positivity rate, they're based on incidences per day, the incidence rate in the county. And with good reason, they believe that that's more accurate than positivity rate, because positivity rate can be determined by how many tests are taken and how many well people take the test. So for a while, we had a lot of worried well people taking the test frequently who didn't have COVID. Your positivity rate's way down. It wasn't really a reflection of what's happening. Or you could have just sick people taking it, and of course your positivity rate's going to go through the roof because 10 people out of 20 people are going to be positive because they're sick.
Has the number of tests gone down?
No, it's gone way up. So now it's
now
an accurate number.
okay.
It's an accurate number now, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
at one point it was a very unstable number in the case rate. So they're looking actually at both to get context. and our positivity rate's been relatively low in Lake County. It's been around 5-ish, which is okay-ish. Now,
8% is what they were saying was the target, 8% or less.
right.
That's been the target.
That's been the target.
Right.
So last week we were 5.5 for positivity rate, and that's when they recommended that we close.
Which is interesting because they've said 8% or less.
But the county is basing it on incidence rate.
Yeah.
So their recommendation is based on incidence rate. It's also based on test turnaround time, but that's been pretty steady too. So it's
Jason,
hard. Yeah,
Are
Stephen.
we referring to as an incident as previously defined as why we're relocating classes and so on? Is that what you're referring to when you say an incident?
Oh no, not in this case. The county is saying positive lab confirmed tests.
Okay.
So the state and the state keeps track of this too. They say, you know, they have incidence rate of new positive cases per day. For example, in our particular community, the new positive cases per day is upwards of 21, the low 20s in new cases per day per 100,000 people. We only have 15,000 here, but so you can compare apples to apples. And they're suggesting that anything over 14 means that there's significant community spread and there's a risk for an outbreak. We're right on that. There's a risk for an outbreak. There isn't an outbreak in our community at this point, but we're at a high risk. So that's what the county's looking at, that is trying to avoid that.
Do you have any history on their logic behind that?
You know, I'm not an
Have
epidemiologist.
they historically traced when it hit 14, all of a sudden it took off? Or is this just a number that
I see what you're
they've
saying.
said, okay, yeah, it's just not acceptable?
Is it
when you think of
epidemiologically
percentage-
based, or is it just?
No, it's epidemiologically based. Yeah, I've seen.
The virus has like a reproduction rate, so they're probably basing
Yep.
it off of the
R value.
There should be some historical trending too,
There is.
in order to see that when it hits 14, then
That's what they're saying, and
because
that's the
number
R value.
itself is pretty low. You think 14 in 100,000? I think 14 in
Per
100
day.
is 14%. 14 in 1,000 is 1.4%. 14 in 10,000, right?
Yeah.
That's 0.14%, and then you get to 0.014% is 14. So that number implies when we are at 0.014% of the population, that precedes an explosion in contraction. So that's why I'm asking if there's some trending where they have that. Because the number itself to me is incredibly low for a percentage of population. Incredibly low.
Right. Yes, they have based. It's not a random. I haven't seen the. I'm not an epidemiologist. I don't read the studies, but that is the point that they're making, Sean, and that's what they're saying. Is that threshold? Because once you get past that, then it's beyond
Like you go
control.
over a waterfall.
Yeah.
Well, I think they're also counting that, you know, if you have 14%, or, the number is 14 in 100,000 that are identified, that you've got so many other ones, you're assuming that so many other ones out there are unidentified, that have spread and are just unidentified, and I'm sure it's based on the infectiousness of this particular disease and how it spreads, how it's behaved so far.
But this is the direction we were craving, you know, back in March when we were all talking about how none of us were epidemiologists. So agree with it or disagree with it, we have to be thankful that we have some guys.
And it's
Yeah.
very
Some
specific
standards,
guidance,
right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's something that, yeah, I appreciate that, Stephen. And yeah, I'm not an epidemiologist, I will say that again. And we did ask for this numbers. This is what they gave us, and this is the result. So here we are, right or wrong. We won't know for a long time, but this is, they're studying this. They're saying this is the numbers that mean it's okay, and this is where it gets a little dicey. And they're not saying that schools are the problem. That is not what the Lake County Health Department is saying. And they're saying, superintendents, with hopefully the support of their board, you have the right to make that decision locally.
Mm-hmm.
But going outside of a recommendation always creates problems when it's not my area of expertise.
Right, if not their recommendations, then whose? But also, then we're in a whole crazy liability bubble on
there's
top of it, where it's,
bingo.
you know, I mean,
Bingo. Heaven
someone
forbid
gets
something would
infected.
happen.
Yeah, and then we would be held accountable, and
Right.
you know.
Guidance. You know, one of the things we talked about initially as well is, making sure that the staff and the teachers, were as comfortable with going back as the families in the community that voted in the, in the online survey that they wanted it. We all had, discussed how that other aspect of it was important to us as well. And there's a natural anxiety, like Jason was talking about earlier, with, some just that there has been a vocalized concern that things are changing, things are getting less safe. It makes people anxious, it makes them feel more vulnerable, and it changes the situation.
Well, and I think it's one thing if the county were to say, based on data, we've now changed that number and with that recommendation, right?
Right.
But for us to arbitrarily say to our staff, that we had told you this number, but now, even though the county is saying you should transition back to fully remote, we're just gonna, I don't think that would be,
Prudent.
It's not prudent, it's also not fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not a reasonable, it's not a reasonable,
and also, that liability that you're speaking about as well. I mean, that's a whole nother beast.
Yep. And the county changed their tune a little bit in the last couple of weeks. I mean, we asked them to make a recommendation. By we, I mean superintendents, I guess. But the whole time they've been saying those schools that have been open and been safe, there's no reason why you should close if things are going well and you don't have an outbreak in your school. And now that's shifted to, now we recommend everything. And they said even if the numbers get above a certain point, it doesn't mean that there's additional problem. You just have to be more cautious and be aware that you could have an outbreak. So it doesn't mean that there's necessarily a problem. It just means they're more likely that there will be, and that we're on the cusp of an outbreak. So we're trying to balance all of that. So I just want, I'll keep discussing this with our staff and with you guys and keep it open. I'd like to keep, I want to keep the kids in school as much as possible as long as it's safe for our staff and the kids.
Does anybody have further questions or concerns? So I think you have your direction.
I think, sure.
It seems like most of us are okay with the K1, at least through this week.
Yeah.
And we'll see where the numbers
See
go
what
this
happens,
week.
right.
Yeah.
Decision
We'll
may
keep
be
everybody,
made for us.
Apprised. But they've been climbing pretty quickly, so.
Yeah. I'm not hopeful that we'll have any kids in the building next week at this point.
Although Jason, I don't wholeheartedly agree with the decision. I really do appreciate your dedication to solving this problem the best you can, and your mind and your heart is definitely in the right place, and I really do appreciate all your thought on this.
Thanks, Stephen.
Great. Okay. On to item D, replacement of the MES copier near the media center.
Originally, we did a request for proposals in 2014 to replace all the copiers. We ended up staying with the company that we had at that point. We kept some of the existing copiers at that point, and then purchased 6 copiers in 2014. And they were all refurbished units that had been rebuilt. And we have one of those units that now is over 2.5 million copies. The next highest one is about 2,150,000, and then we have some as low as 262,000. One of the things Jason and I have talked about is looking at finances and everything like that. Do we just want to go ahead and continue to replace machines for the time being as they begin to get to that point where they're going to be difficult to repair or to find parts, or do we do something else? But that would mean going into a lease program because we don't have the cash available to purchase. I can say that the company that we're with now, Techstar, has not increased the prices even though that 5-year agreement is over. We just continued on a year-to-year basis at the same rates that they negotiated in 2014 on a cost per copy. So I'm very happy with what they've done with us. I would kind of recommend that we just go ahead and, well, let me tell you a little bit about the machine that's available now. The list price of the machines, like the large machines that we have, and actually it's the machine just outside the media center here that we're talking about replacing. It was one of the ones that was in the copy room in the elementary office. To replace that machine with a new one of the same type of model is about $32,545. There's a U.S. Communities bid that we can participate in that would lower that cost to $13,200. They have a demonstrator model available that has low meter reading, kind of like buying a new car, but you buy one that the salesperson drove. So this is one they've used to take it around and show people and let them try it out for a short time. And then this one also has PostScript, which is an additional charge. And if I remember correctly, that's probably another couple $1,000 to the cost of the machine. But it actually allows it to print a little bit better, and it works better with the Macs as far as sending files directly to the printer rather than a machine without PostScript. So we could purchase a demonstrator model, and they only have one available at this point, which they've kind of placed on hold, waiting to see what we're thinking, for $11,285, so almost a $2,000 savings off the discounted price for U.S. Communities bid. So I wanted to get a sense as to if the board would be comfortable with that type of approach, to just look at replacing copiers as we need to, just because it's something that we can take a smaller hit, every year or two, rather than having to go out and buy 10 or 15 copiers all at once, or doing a lease, which is where we probably end up. I just wanted to get a sense as far as what the board was thinking, and then we could put it on the agenda for a future meeting for approval.
Do we keep any data on how many copies are made, how many repairs are made per copy, anything like that?
I have the copy data, I think as of September 30th, for these 6 machines that were purchased in 2014. I'm sure that I can get the repair data from the company. But I do know that, especially those 2 machines that were in the main office, they definitely have gotten a lot more use, and have much more frequent, repair calls just because they're in a location that's central and they get a lot more use. But I can check on, repair calls, et cetera, if you'd like me to. I'm sure they can provide me with that info.
We could probably create a general idea of what copiers are gonna start becoming more expensive and choose to replace them before the expenses start going up. Doesn't have to be exact, but it
No, I
gives you
know.
a general idea.
And like I said, I know the next, lowest number of or the next highest number of copies is of 2.15 million. So I'm guessing that just in looking at those numbers, that probably is gonna be the next one. And then everything else was lower than that. But I do have those numbers and I could share those with you and then I can check on, they keep that data too, because that's kind of when they come to me and say, hey, we're really having a problem with this copier and, we fixed it 5 times and, it's just kind of starting to die. And they have kind of been looking out for when something comes, becomes available, to let us know so that we could get something at a savings. So, I do appreciate that and it is something, like I said, when we did this contract in 2014, they actually their bid was a lower price per copy than what we had been paying before. So it was very competitive, with all the other vendors that submitted bids. And with copiers, it's kind of like computers. You can do a request for proposal, but you don't always have to take the lowest. You can take all these other factors into consideration as far as repair history and how quickly they come out to repair and how quickly they've worked with us if we've had problems. And we have been very happy with them, and after they dropped their price in 2014, I'm even happier. Just because it did save us some money and allowed us to continue and, to have the same cost per copy for 6 years in a row. It's pretty amazing.
So are we doing like a lease now, or do we own them?
No, we own them.
We're talking.
We own all the machines that we have in the district.
So why is it a price per copy?
Oh, that's for the service side of it. They provide the toner and, all the repairs for that cost per copy. That's just, the cost per copy includes the maintenance.
So would it make sense, in this economic climate to have an RFP? I agree, I think you need to replace these machines that have these high counts. We had 2.5 and 2.15 in the 6 years. I think that's a smart way to go about it. But I also think, in this economic climate, you may get some really good deals if there's an RFP. Possibly. Do you have, say, a set of 3 that you would consider in pricing from?
Oh, I have my list from before of maybe 10. We got several prices the last time. The only thing that when you do that though, you need to go ahead and swap out everything, as opposed to
the trenches rather than just getting to.
Right, I don't want to be dealing with 2 different companies to do
right.
repairs and copier maintenance. So it's one of those that, personally, I feel like, I don't think we're gonna get a lot better pricing if we just wanna replace 1 or 2 copiers at a time, by going to another company. But, if that's what the board would like, we could do an RFP, but in that case, if we were replacing all the copiers, then we would have a fairly substantial lease cost every year.
So you haven't had a scenario in the past where they would say, okay, we'll sell you these 2 copiers right now and provide maintenance on these?
Right, because they're all pretty much, like a Canon dealer isn't gonna come in and, and do support for a Ricoh, which is what we have now.
Right.
Or something like that, so we'd still have to deal with 2 different companies. And basically, they wanna come in and get all your business. So we would either look at where we'd do a strict lease, or we'd look at a lease to purchase kind of agreement, which then is gonna, basically you just be financing instead of, paying out. Now, when we did this in 2014, we had the cash available that we could just purchase the machines.
I'd say I have experience with the management leasing machines,
Yeah.
and it has not worked out well. You get whatever machine they give you.
Yeah.
We had a machine that was supposed to replace a bad machine. They sent it and it had a bent frame, because that was the one that we had available. So, that's just my experience from work and make decisions, you know, so they had an opportunity to buy it, but it's not been a positive experience.
And I can say that when we did the RFP, pretty much there was a cluster of companies that were at about the same price point as the company that we ended up staying with. And I don't know, Jason, how long have we been with this company? You know, probably ever since you've been, prior to you coming to the district.
So that's 15 years.
Okay.
Your reference point. Long time.
Yes.
You know, I can go either way. I mean, I'm comfortable with just going ahead and
Yeah,
replacing
I
the
mean,
machine now.
If
rather
nobody's up
than,
for an RFP, then, you know,
then
that's okay.
you're looking probably a higher cost than.
That's okay.
But ideally, you're probably looking at, over the next couple of years, I'm gonna guess, you know, this one's 11,000, you know, probably over the next couple of years, replacing a couple more. You know, like the one that's from the 2014 that only has 262,000 copies, that one's probably not one that we're gonna have to worry about for
Right.
a few years. But it is something that in another, couple of years, depending on how finances are, that may be something, we may wanna do another RFP at that point.
But we'd be in the same boat, right?
We'd be in the same boat, but hopefully by then, we'll know a little bit more about how much all of the COVID-related items are gonna continue to cost us, if there's gonna be any federal dollars to come in to help us. You know, and I know nothing's gonna happen with that till after the election. As far as looking at any type of help for local government, schools, et cetera.
Well, I think, you know, because there's a maintenance side of it, if we're looking at, you know, if we were looking at switching companies, I think that would be a little risky there, riskier than we maybe want it to be right now, because that could end up being more complicated with that.
But there are some companies that just do maintenance, just.
Yeah.
I mean, that always, that variable always exists.
You know, I can go either way, but
If it's been 15 years and you have good experience, and I know you're a good steward, you know, that looks like a good price for the one replacement. I just thought there could be some hanging fruit out there.
Yeah, and there may be, I mean, they're all gonna tell you they have it until when you get the pricing, and then you really look at what they're charging, what they're not charging.
Yeah.
And that's the analysis is always interesting. Because no matter how you structure the RFP, you don't always get apples for apples.
It's like buying a mattress.
Yeah. You know, like I said, I can go either way, but I do think that if we do an RFP, then we're gonna have, over the next couple of years, a lot higher cost per year, just because of the fact that we would wanna replace the machines that we currently have.
Maybe.
Does anybody else have anything? Is that big? Okay. So are we thinking maybe this one's okay, but then we wanna maybe try to put it out for bid next time? But seem okay to everyone?
Two that are done and two
Yeah.
deals and.
And we have two that are high cost, or high copy count.
We can start planning on, and then kind of track the usage and know a couple months beforehand that we can start thinking about it.
Yeah, I'll get the repair history as well, so we can see which units have had, you know, high volume of repairs. But I
Okay.
can't say that, you know,
Oh.
overall they're very reliable.
I would just say, yeah, sorry, I was just gonna add that I think with so I work at Quill, and I think that a lot of the companies that are currently on like the lease programs are going to be trying to, you know, get out and rearrange them just because of everything going on with COVID. So there might be like an industry-wide response that, you know, makes certain leases or retail agreements more lucrative within like the next year or two. It might be something to watch and wait on.
Okay. All right. And on to district goals. I asked Brendan if he would take a crack at superintendent evaluation tool for the district goals. Do we have things that we want to add or reconsider for the draft of the goals? We discussed this last time. We presented them first last time. And then Brendan has already done a tool. He has a draft of a tool. So we're running it past Dr. Lynn right now, and then we'll send it out to the board, and as long as there's not anything glaring to folks.
Can I send you this?
Sure.
All right. I will do that.
So look for that. We'll send you the draft of the superintendent evaluation tool. That's not something we have to approve as a board, but I think it's important that the board is able to give feedback on what, you know, the tool we're going to be using to measure our effectiveness this year. The district effectiveness. So we will discuss that again next time. But in the meantime, we'll send it out to everyone as soon as Brendan
Gets the access to this.
Yeah. Oh, he didn't. Yeah.
I think. I'm not sure.
No, there were just a couple things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It wasn't the whole thing. It was just a couple things.
Okay.
But he fixed it.
Okay.
So we'll send that out to everyone. Take a look at it. If you have concerns, bring them to the next meeting. And otherwise, we'll just go with, as long as Dr. Lynn's comfortable with it too, we'll go with that, with the tool. Thank you so much, Brendan, for taking a crack at that for us. I really appreciate it. On to future agenda items, which include progressive policy updates, board self-governance goals, review of board agreements, review and revise board agenda calendar. The board agenda calendar, by the way, has been linked to, it's on the page that has the agendas and the meetings and the minutes on the website. So it's linked to the district website. So if you want to, you can review it there now instead of just the board drive. So I think we should probably do that next time, because I want to make sure everyone reads through it, and I think we need to reconsider some of the timetables that we set out. We originally did this, gosh, Jason, what, 3 years ago?
This calendar?
Yeah, the agenda calendar. I
Um,
sat down and hashed it out in the office.
Yeah,
And then
updated
the
it 3 years.
board-
Yeah.
Yeah. And the board chimed in with some things, and we got the document together. So it's we'll just say, like, it's time to make sure we reconsider what's in there and the timing, because sometimes timing changes, and depending on and the reality is, it's not that it happens exactly in that month. It's that 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 item is gonna come up for discussion in that time period. So we choose a month that is in in the ballpark, but it just allows the public to know when we're going to be bringing these items up for discussion, and it lets other board members know, so that it's a transparency measure. It allows us to know, oh, okay, we should be talking about this right around this time, and if that time goes by and it hasn't been discussed in a meeting and hasn't been approved, then any board member, any member of the public can say, hey, I didn't see that. So if we can look through this, we'll put it as that'll be the next
Discussion
next
item
meeting,
at
yeah.
the next cow.
Yeah, the next meeting. Because I think it's an important tool, particularly for the board. Because when you first get on the board, until you've had a year on the board, you don't know all of the things that you have to oversee. And the agenda calendar allows for new board members right away to see all the things they're supposed to oversee. And also gives us direction for our meetings. So if something isn't on the agenda calendar and it's not on our, in our district goals, then maybe it shouldn't be in the meeting, that kind of thing. It helps focus us and make sure that we are using the public's time the best we can. And that makes us a more effective governing body at the end of the day, which is always what we're going for. So check those out for next time, and we'll have that discussion then. Responsible bidder ordinance. Does anybody else have a future agenda item they'd like to add? I guess the superintendent evaluation tool. Okay, then on to the superintendent report.
Okay, briefly, I'd like to talk a little bit about our NWEA results, our map testing. So we finished map testing with everybody 1st through 8th grade, with the exception of 2 classes in 1st grade, the 2 remote classes. We gave up, maybe even 2nd grade too. I'm not sure about if we got 2nd grade in, but it was just too hard. The kids hadn't done it before, and it just got to be too cumbersome and problematic. So we didn't do those particular kids, but we'll get them hopefully another day. So the overall story that I'm seeing from the information is our kids aren't necessarily falling off the cliff academically due to this pandemic. We're doing okay. Our teachers are doing a great job of keeping them engaged, learning. Our parents are doing a great job of supporting them, even though it might not feel like it every day. But things are going okay. There's a couple of spots where I have concern, that being 6th grade, and I don't know if that's partially the transition from elementary to middle school and having COVID and this cumulative stress theory going on of not ever being in the building, not connecting with teachers as much, and having multiple teachers, or what multiple explanations perhaps. But I'm concerned about the 6th grade. And it's not to say that they're way below grade level all of a sudden, or the kids are going to be so far behind they can't catch up. They're going to be okay. Our teachers are going to be working with them, and we will give them all the support they need to catch up. But that is an area that we need to watch, monitor, and I'm concerned about it enough to say, let's get some extra support in. And if I have to prioritize a grade level at the middle school, it's 6th grade. So if there's kids who are struggling, let's bring those kids into school as long as we can get them in safely. So 2nd grade, it looks like it's worse than it is, but 1st grade takes a different test. It's in the map suite, and it's supposed to translate, but it doesn't really translate from one grade to the next. So the numbers may be a little bit skewed because of that. So when we see 13% fewer students above the norm, less from first grade to second grade. Maybe that's more the assessment, but when I looked a little bit deeper at the numbers too, they're scoring a little bit lower. Our current second grade scoring a little bit lower in the fall this year than they were in the fall than last year's second grade in the fall. So probably an area that we need to watch out for, and I'm not surprised. I mean, it's just, we've had a semester now. We had almost pretty much a quarter at the end of last year and a quarter at the beginning of this year where we're in transitioning remote learning and lots of different environments, and it's pretty tough on kids. So
Well, the quarter plus
Clearly.
the summer for a first
plus the
grader,
summer loss.
Yeah, is. I mean,
But this would
that's-
take into account the summer loss because it would be the same fall to
Mm.
fall kind of, but
What, like 6 months
yeah, right.
continuous is really
So-
different from 3
It's like
months continuous.
it's an extended summer
It
loss,
is.
perhaps.
Yeah.
But overall, very, very pleased and impressed with what I'm seeing. So while there's a couple of areas of concern, I think we're going to be in good shape this year, and we'll continue to monitor, and we'll see what a whole year does of stress and anxiety and learning. But what I'm hoping is to kind of take people's perspective and say, okay, our kids are not totally dropping off of the academic universe at this point. They're doing okay. They're still learning something. We're making some progress. Let's keep them going. Let's support them emotionally, because I know that's been a struggle this week. Going back into remote is very difficult for many of our kids. So let's do the best we can to support them emotionally, and keep going academically. Keep working. Keep kids focused. Keep things as normal as possible, but moving forward. I just don't want the panic. I never like that fear, and I think the numbers support that we're doing okay.
I have to say this was a huge relief for me.
Good. I hope.
I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, but this is so much better than I had. Anticipated that it would be. I thought there would be a significant amount more of drop off. So it's promising.
It is promising. And 7th and 8th grade actually went up. But is that because they took the test at home and used the calculator? I don't know. Those guys are pretty smart. But overall, what we're not seeing, there's all kinds of variables here. I know example of one 6th grader who struggled a lot because she kept getting kicked off of the testing, and so it wasn't the perfect, smoothest environment all the time, but it went fairly well. So it's something to look at. And now we're going to look at individual scores. I also did a quick glance at comparing teachers who are remote and teachers who are in person. There's no trends there difference either, which was good to see. And could that be the kid? It's hard. It's a small sample size. So I'm not, but nothing of concern to say, okay, those kids are just dropping. Again, we're not dropping off the cliff as far as academics. Yeah.
I can see why you'd want to, supplement the kids who are, higher end learners. I think adding that accelerated during the afternoon would be.
And when we're talking about 2 or 3%, that's 3 or 4 kids total.
Yeah.
So, and I know we've got a few kids who are struggling for a variety of reasons in 6th grade. So it makes sense. It shows up here.
Anybody have questions about this? Okay. Anything else, Dr. Lynn?
That's it. 24-hour challenge was Friday. Dan and Jazzo and Kevin Yost did a great job of keeping that event going in spirit and giving our kids something to do and get out and get some exercise. My daughter ran 5.5 miles for this event, and anything that gets her to run 5.5 miles, I think, is a massive success. That's amazing. So it was good celebration of fitness, and I appreciated them doing all that they could to make it work the best they could.
My dog got about 4 or 5 miles.
Your dog got, yeah.
Okay,
That's
anything
it.
else? Okay. Business office report, Dr. Johns.
Okay, well, next meeting, we're gonna start the property tax levy process. This year, as a part of her internship, I'm gonna be working with Carly Kraft, to work with the levy, so that she can learn that process. So that's something that we've got coming up next. Finally, the unemployment fraud has hit Melbourne. We've had 2 teachers that have been targeted. So I've worked with both of them as far as what they need to do to protect their identities. But there are other districts that are getting several of these every day, especially larger districts. One district actually saw where it looked like they were going alphabetical through their list of employees. I did check with our software vendor for our financial software just to make sure that there hadn't been any breaches of our data, and there was nothing that they could see that would indicate that anyone had accessed any of that data from our database. It actually sent me all the logs of everybody who'd logged into the system, so all the names I recognized, and they were all legitimate logins, so I don't think we have an issue there, but it's just something that's happening all over, and it's not just us, it's policemen, firemen, all sorts of businesses. But it's really interesting when I hear stories about one district, the business manager themselves, got their own unemployment claim that they didn't file, and another one, somebody in the business office got theirs. So it's happening all over, and it's unfortunate that people are taking advantage of what's going on now to try and get money from individuals. We do also have it's an ISDN Prime connection. It's basically the pipe between here and the middle school where we send data back and forth, as well as the phone calls go back and forth over that line. I do have a quote from AT&T. I'm getting a quote from the provider that we switched to last year for a plain old telephone service, which is our old the older style phone lines. So that's just something that once I get that, we'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and start that process. It's kind of a normal cost that we've always had. We have already shifted today. We now have, instead of 3 delivery routes, we now have 5 delivery routes, and the bus drivers are going to rotate through to do that process. So that's moving forward just fine. We have had some of the families who were getting meals in person who've now requested either to come pick up meals or to have us deliver. So, and I'm sure that over the next week or so that we'll have some additional people making those requests. But we already talked about Arbor, property tax collection. At this point, we're still pretty much even, had a little bit higher collection rate at this point last year than this year, but it's just one of those things that once we get through the entire year, then we'll be able to see a little better where we're going to be, because the county doesn't while they're close to the same dates, they don't always do the distributions on the same dates every year, so it makes it really difficult to get a real precise idea as to what's happening. But overall, 3% less in the middle of October than what we got last year, I don't think is bad, considering that the county went to the 4-payment plan. Because we will have some people who will wait till November 9th, I believe it is, to make their final payment.
So it's possible we will get everything.
Oh, I don't have any doubt that we'll get the majority. I don't think we'll have any problem still getting the 99.9% collection. It's just a matter of
when
we won't get it all until sometime in November, December. Typically, they do another distribution December or January to finish off whatever they've collected, so, yeah, I'm not concerned about that. My concern was if it was gonna cause a cash flow problem just because of how the money was gonna come in, and I've been very pleased so far with the fact that, you know, we've kind of been either above or below slightly where we were a year ago, so. For me, this has been very helpful to keep this data, just so I can see what's happening, as a percent of the total levy. We also have one of our mowers here at the elementary building that, basically the block is blown. Initially, we thought it was just a head gasket, and when they actually took it apart, they realized that the entire block, so basically the engine needs to be replaced. Or you know, the biggest cost of the engine. A new unit like that is in the $15,000 range, but we probably don't need something quite that large. To repair it would cost $6,000. And that unit is about 13 years old. So I have 2 quotes so far, one to replace it with a similar product, another with a different mower, and then we've got another quote coming in the next 2 or 3 days. So in November, I'll bring those back to you. We're thinking that we're probably gonna get a little better pricing on some of them this fall, just because of the fact that this is the end of the season, so we buy last year's model instead of next year's model. The other quote I got is like 10,300 or something like that for, it's actually a unit that you sit on, but it's a 0-turn unit. Like I said, we're getting one more quote, and I'll kind of compile all that and put it in my report, or we can discuss it at the next meeting, once you have all the information. And then we've already talked about copiers, so.
Okay. Does anybody have questions for Dr. Johns? Okay. On to board reports. Anybody?
24-hour challenge was fun. People running through the woods. Passed one on my job, or he passed me actually. Like I said, my dog went several times. My older son went a couple of times.
Good.
Well, I'm glad that we still found a way of putting it on. And the golf team was in good condition.
Yeah.
So we had fun with it.
Good.
I will just add that we, on the ballot this year, have 4 open school board spots. So if you are watching this right now, and you are a community member, you might ought to consider it, because if you're tuning in, that means you have an interest. So please consider it, everyone. Dr. Lind, you guys usually help anyone who has questions or.
Yep. Veronica and I talked about it last week.
Right.
We're getting together some information. You can get it at the Lake County Clerk.
Yes. The
Lake County Clerk online. You can go pick up packets in Waukegan. I think you can print them out actually too.
Yeah, you just print them out at home.
You just print them out at home.
All you have to do is Google.
Or you can pick them up here. We'll print them out for you.
All you have to do is Google 2021 municipal election petition packets.
Right.
Lake County Clerk.
And those
2021
elections.
Municipal election petition packets, Lake County Clerk. And then everything is there. They'll be printed out. And there's also, right on that page is a set of instructions. So if it's like candidate, if you're a candidate, this is how you fill them out, and it gave you very specific instructions. I can only tell you, I learned the hard way. Make sure you heed all of those instructions, no matter how nitpicky. But yeah, and normally I would say you can ask me, but Jason or Veronica would be more than happy to answer any questions anybody has about running for the board.
Yep.
You absolutely should.
We're going to send out something this week. I didn't want to confuse it with the epic board elections.
Oh, right, yeah, one thing at a time.
And, you know, we have another election coming up, I think, next week. So I heard.
Maybe.
I'm not sure.
Heard a thing or
I'm not
two
sure
about
what's
it,
going on
yeah.
next week, but so we'll wait. There's been a little confusion because there's a little confusion with the Epic board already, and then there's confusion with when the board elections are, because some people were campaigning for November, I think, or asking about November, how to get on. And this is for April. The elections are April something-ish, and so
We don't have
now.
to do stuff until January.
December 21st.
Yeah.
Yep, the packets are due December 21st, and you need 50 signatures of whomever. They have to be resident, as you.
You need to get more than 50 because they all have to
They
be
could be-
registered voters.
Yep, and they could get tossed out. So.
So, but they will help you.
Yep.
But really run, okay. So, because we don't want to be in a position where, you know, we have to, I don't know, have multiple write-ins or something like that, so, good. Anybody else have anything for board reports? Then, there being no further business, I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed?